I have two questions, which mainly for the department. Just to go back on your response to one of the questions earlier on, you said that 26% of the capital funding was funded by domestic water charges within Irish Water. Is it not the situation that the government provides all the capital and that the 26% isn't exactly accurate, or can you expand a wee bit more on that, explain that?
There's obviously charges from domestic, non-domestic in the business plan model, and subvention, which equates to the state purchasing water as a customer for the capped charges, free allowances. So that amount is equal to the allowed revenue that the regulator sets. And what they set as allowed revenue covers operational expenditure and also the cost of funds that were referred previously, funding the capital programme. So what I'm saying is there is a surplus in that revenue over operations that goes towards capital. There is an equity provision which over the coming years will average at 270 million, and there's an amount of debt raised. And the combination of three give you your capital spending.
All right. So, but the 26% you referenced earlier, is the Irish Water funds the cost of the borrowing, the interest on the borrowing, not the revenue borrowing?
From the revenue from revenue from charges.
Right. Funds the actual.
So you've revenue from charges, you've equity coming in or a capital contribution coming in from the state, and you've borrowing, and they're the three elements that make up how they fund the capital programme.
All right. Okay. The other question just is one of the obstacles put up, as are constantly mentioned, has been mentioned a couple of times today here as well, is in relation to certainty of funding for Irish Water. In the situation where the state is the sole customer of Irish Water, obviously Irish Water will bill the state every year. Is that not a different type of funding than what you've been talking about in terms of certainty of funding? I mean, the state can decide whether to invest in roads or anything like that. It's not that the Transport Infrastructure Ireland is billing the state every year for a service provided. So it's a different type of funding requirement. Would that not be the case? And it would fall due as a liability rather than as a thing that the state has arbitrary control over, whether they decide to give X amount or Y amount. It is actually that the amount that is billed is a liability rather than a budgetary decision. Would that be the case?
Yes, I think it is a different funding model to a model previously that would see operations funded in one way and capital funded in another way, like other areas of infrastructure. It is dependent on obviously the bill being presented to the state and the mechanism being in place that the state will honour that bill, and that's certainty around. But there are mechanisms in other countries where the state, for example, gives an outline over a multi-annual period to say this is the likely funding available, and the regulator and the utility work in that vein. And I think we set out in one of our earlier papers how that might work. But you're correct, Deputy. There is greater certainty from the utilities' perspective if they can simply present the bill to the state as a sole customer and they get that bill paid.
Yeah, but I mean, the model that's proposed in the sorry, Chairman, this is very quickly. The model that's proposed in the expert group is that the utility presents a bill to the state, so that level of uncertainty isn't there in terms of it's a liability on the state rather than a decision that the state can make as to we have X amount this year and that's all you're getting, kind of thing.
Yeah. It depends on what the mechanism is when the bill is presented, that the state has to honour that exact bill. Yeah.
But
it's not part of the budget, yeah. You know, whether it's part of the budgetary process.
It's a bill that has to be honoured rather than being part of the budgetary process.
If that was the mechanism that was put in place, you know.
That's the mechanism that's proposed in the expert group.
Yeah, I'm just distinguishing whether there would be a legal requirement that was put in place around that, or a policy requirement around that, because, as you know, budget from states and appropriation council tend to be done on an annual basis, and the Oireachtas doesn't tend to be tied in on a multi-annual process in that way. So I'm just saying.
I really need to go ahead, so Deputy. I really do.
Well, it doesn't tend to be, but it's not in.
You know, no, seriously.